Max, the one to watch for the best in entertainment, now has live sports with the Bleacher Report sports add-on.
5, 4, 3, 2, I let one go.
Stream hundreds of select live games from MLB.
That's gonna go!
NBA, NHL, U.S. Soccer, and NCAA Men's March Madness. And it's all included for a limited time with any Max subscription.
He got him!
After the promo period, add it for $9.99 a month. Base subscription required.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Serie Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to our latest edition of the Serie A Chronicles Q&A, because we know you would miss us too much if we only dropped into your podcast inbox once a week. So we come along an extra time every week to answer your questions that you send us in between podcasts. It's me, Nikki Maldini. I have with me, as ever, to answer your questions, the wonderful Mina Riziki. We've all just about recovered from Mina's limerick in this week's main podcast. Amazingly, I don't have any questions for you about that, Mina, but I do have a question for you about Juventus. So I'm going to jump right in with this one. Evan Sardo wrote in to ask us, what would you propose as the best in-house solution for the Juventus midfield? Weston McKennie has knocked in a few goals lately, but results haven't exactly been positive. Is there any hope for the Locatelli-McKennie partnership? What do you think?
I mean, the best solution is to just chuck them all out and keep Locatelli and try to find whatever we can in any underage category to shove right.
Are we just stripping it back now to like a literally like not even fielding 11 players? Just put Locatelli out there, Chiesa and Szczesny, and say off you go.
Let's hope so. And that's actually pretty mean because McKennie scored obviously in 2 games in a row, and I do think that he's getting he's sort of rediscovering himself. So I am a little bit pleased with his performances, even if he wasn't exactly fascinating against Fiorentina. But some games will go for you, some will go against you. But listen to me. Any midfield that does not contain Rabiot is perfect for me. Yeah. So I'm going to be honest. I mean, listen, even the French were criticizing their own player, you know. It's not that Rabiot is terrible. I get it. He has the physique. He knows how to do a few things. And actually, at least on a tactical level, sometimes he covers gaps. But I just don't see really the value add that he brings in. And I would like a formation that it is Locatelli, who is more of a direct role, because it seems like that's where Allegri is heading in that direction. McKennie to be somebody that can be a little bit more box to box, add something to going forward, add something going back, but a little bit more of a reliance on actual wingers, you know. And since, let's be honest, you have Chiesa, you have Bernardeschi, you have so many different players that know how to do this, Kulusevski, you know, and then maybe have Dybala or Morata, and just have a team where actually everyone plays in their place. But I would prefer 2 midfielders. I think that's what they did against St. Petersburg. I think that's what makes it look so good. I think it unleashes the attacking force of the team if you can push them higher up. It's just about knowing how to protect yourself. And it seems like Allegri is a lot more scared of the attacking forces within Serie A than he is of the attacking forces within the Champions League. But for me, yes, that is the solution, because I don't know when Arthur's ever really going to be ready when can consider how much physical problems he has suffered throughout his career. And if anyone watched, there was a documentary on Brazil in which he really doesn't like to play with any pain whatsoever. He can be quite fantastic, but he isn't somebody that I'm going to say to you on a physical point of view I can depend on. And Bentancur, I mean, he's far too disappointing, far too inconsistent. I've yet to really see the potential that everyone has spoken of. He's not a bad player. He's just not a Juventus level player. Neither he, neither Rabiot, Aaron Ramsey, really, I'm not even sure McKennie is, but I know that Locatelli is. And so he is the only firm and fixed point that I like. But McKennie next to him, for me, seems to be the most reasonable solution. What do you think, Nikki?
We're obviously in the main episode this week with Gab. We talked about Juventus' issues at some length, and perhaps we still didn't get into this sort of specific topic as much. But I don't know. I don't know how you make a midfield that I'm going to feel really good about out of what Juventus have right now. Yeah. There's a couple of players who right off the bat, you just think, well, they're not going to be there very often. Aaron Ramsey, we've basically, I think, in our minds, probably all discarded at this point because he's there so rarely, and now it seems that the club is working to move him on. Arthur has been injured so often, and to me, honestly, I haven't been that impressed when he's been on the pitch. Is my feeling about him. I share your feeling that I don't know still what Adrien Rabiot is as a midfielder. I don't know how he fits into any midfield, honestly. And Bentancur, at least I'm looking at and thinking, well, I've had periods when I've been quite high on you. I think you've got talent. I think I can understand you as a midfielder and find a job for you. And I think McKennie kind of goes into that same bracket. I'm just not that high on McKennie. And I feel like I've sort of moderated, how I say that, because he's a young player and there's still time for him to mature and to learn things in a new context. I think that there was just so much desire for him to be brilliant that some of what got reported about him when he first got to Juventus was overhyped, in my opinion. I think there was such a sort of desire for him to be something more than he was. But that doesn't mean he's not, again, in the context of that Juventus midfield, that doesn't mean he's not one of the better options they have. I continue to think that he's a bit of a sandlot player who does his best work in chaos. I'm not sure he's a very structured midfielder. I don't think he's technically a really, really high level midfielder. Of course, anyone who's playing in Serie A is a high level midfielder, but do I think he's at the level of where Juventus are trying to be? I'm not convinced. But does he give you something? Yes, he gives you, there's probably an American word for it that would be better, but grinta. He gives you hard work. He gives you graft when he's switched on. He gives you aggression and combativeness, and he gives you goals. And all of those things are useful. So do I think he's part of the best in-house solution for Juventus today? Maybe. Because who else am I putting into that conversation? I mean, am I putting Bernardeschi to be part of that conversation, or Kulusevski or someone? I'm out of midfielders. But do I think he's what Juventus should be building around? I'm more skeptical at that point. You know, Locatelli's a really good midfielder and you can build something around that. Do I think that McKennie is who Juventus should aspire to have, being that guy in another 2 years' time? Honestly, from what I've seen so far, no, but maybe there's a level that he can still go to that I haven't seen yet.
You know, it's funny because right now I would take, even the bench warmers that other teams have, like Deme, because obviously Anguissa has been so wonderful that he's not playing for Napoli. He's also had injuries, but I mean, I'd love to have him, I'd love to have Sensi. If it is going to be Tonali and Kessie, then may I have Benasser? Obviously, that's not going to work out. But these are really great midfields, when you're looking at Inter, when you're looking at Milan. And sadly for Juve, barring Locatelli, I don't genuinely see any talents. And it's a far cry from the years when we had Arturo Vidal, obviously Andrea Pirlo, Claudio Marchisio, Paul Pogba, even the likes of Pereira, who's at Udinese right now. I miss him. He's an attacking mid, but my God, at least there was something there. There was some beauty to the game. Obviously, Khedira, Matuidi, miss them all, but that's the one section that Juventus really need to work on. And I think it's the one section that's been missing a lot in the last few years. Okay, should we go on to... Oh, good. Next question. I'm going to ask you, Nikki. And this is from Netanel Sunday on Instagram. Is that how I would say that? Nikki, help me out. Is that Netanel?
Yes.
I
sort of, because it looks like in my head a name I'm more familiar with, which is Nathaniel. My brain wants to say Nathaniel, but that's not how it's spelled. So I would go with Netanel, and Netanel, if you're listening, well, correct us if we're wrong.
Yes, please. But the question is, why doesn't Strakosha play for Lazio? Not long ago, he was a very promising goalkeeper. Oh, I like Scoufed, which my friends always laugh at me because I still love Scoufed. And now a goalkeeper who saved a balloon is playing before him. Who saved a balloon? So why doesn't Strakosha play for Lazio, Nikki?
I think the short answer is, unfortunately, because, and this happens to so many goalkeepers, doesn't it? The good performances get outweighed at a certain point by specific blunders. So actually, even this season, Strakosha is playing for Lazio. He's been playing in the Europa League games, or at least he was. But unfortunately, he's had some absolute... just trying to think to myself, did he play against Marseille? He did play against Marseille, so he's still playing in the Europa League games, in fact. But he's had some blunders, even in relatively few games. He had an absolutely shocking moment against Galatasaray already in the Europa League this season. And goalkeeping is such a specific position that you can be a really great defender 90% of the time. But if you are going to, in the other 10%, do things that are really, really critically bad, it's too costly for your team to keep you there. And I think we've seen that with goalkeepers at all different levels. We've seen that, that's how Liverpool end up with Alisson, isn't it? Because they have a panic about the fact they haven't been able to have a goalkeeper that they can rely on. So they go out and spend the money on one who they can. I think Strakosha, maybe it would be good for him to be somewhere else, to have a new context, to wash all of those mistakes away and start over. I think he's not an irredeemable talent because he's got talent. And I suppose you could even look at someone like Szczesny, who ended up leaving Arsenal because of a perception of too many mistakes and has gone on to something better at Juventus, even though he still makes some mistakes. But in the end, the short answer to that question is too many big mistakes. And Pepe Reina, while probably not at this age capable of some of the highs that Strakosha could make, some of the eye-catching saves, simply is making less game-losing blunders.
I mean, I think this is such a perfect response. There's really very little for me to add. But I will say that one thing that Maurizio Sarri loved about Pepe Reina and Napoli was that he had such a voice. He always spoke in the dressing room. He knew how to communicate with his defenders. He knew how to communicate with the team in every way, to push them on, to rally them on when they were losing, when they were winning, whatever it may be. He loved his voice. And I think that's the difference, because Szczesny could be doing, for example, a lot better for Juventus, but my issue with him will be, obviously there are a lot on a technical level, but mostly that sometimes I don't think he communicates as well. And I think that's a major thing that we don't sometimes talk about, because it is about a unit, and it's about how well every team understands to say, leave that for me, or speaks loudly, or move here, or close that gap, or whatever it may be. And I think, you could see straight away that Donnarumma had that leadership. And I guess perhaps for Strakosha, the communication necessarily wasn't there on a defensive level. But with Pepe Reina, I think that's one of his superpowers at the back. He's always been such a leader. So whatever that he missed out on or can do on a purely technical, physical level, I think that he more than made up for with his brain and communication, just his ability to really be a captain at the back.
All right, Mina, next one for you. which is from Jill in Shave. I'm not sure where that is, Jill, but Jill, anyway, thank you for the question. Jill asks, do you think Daniel Maldini should move on loan from Milan as he isn't getting any game time? Mina, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I know that a lot of people think that when youngsters are trying to find space, whether or not, it's a question of moving on or not. It obviously depends on what you can provide a team, and at others, when they are really not finding the space, then it's a good moment to go. But Brahim Diaz was sort of the number 2, I felt, to Çalhanoğlu, and now Maldini is the number 2 to Brahim Diaz. But for me, I thought it was interesting when Giroud was talking recently in an interview, and they were talking about players that he's been impressed by. And he actually did mention Daniel Maldini and talked about him as somebody that, he's interesting to watch. I think he offers a difference in skill to what we're seeing from the rest of the team. He's young, so there shouldn't be too much pressure applied to him, but he is in a club that is one that is so deeply rooted to his family's history. His father is a director. So despite there being pressure, he actually feels a home there. And it's such a close tie that he's somebody that I feel will probably be a little bit like a Francesco Totti or Del Piero's, like, I've got to make it in this team. I don't want to have to move somewhere else to prove myself. At least this is just me assuming this, so I don't know. But I do believe that he will be given his chances, because if there's any coach that I would want to help me with my progression, it would be Stefano Pioli. And he's talked about the fact that Pioli comes so often and speaks to him. He calls him up. He tells him tips of what to do, how to train. And he feels very close to him, that he can call up his coach and ask for advice. Am I going to be played here? What should I do here? How can I affect the game in a different way? And having that kind of relationship with a coach is really important. And there are so many that simply would love to have it. So if you do have that, don't take it for granted, because I really do think sometimes football is changing. And when you are a team like Milan that has to win at all times, having the ability to be a winner as well as working for a coach who has the time to talk to you all the time is something that I would do everything in my power to keep.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. We've talked so much in the podcast about Pioli's man management and how that's his great asset, and why wouldn't you want to be around that? I have 2 cousins who played professionally and were in the youth team at Inter, and very different experiences, but certainly one of them who went on to do a number of loan moves, and I really got a very sort of first-hand accounting through that of some of the frustrations that can happen when you end up going on loan somewhere and that situation turns out not to be what you hope it is, because a manager who was there when you go somewhere on loan ends up losing their job after 2 weeks or something like that. There were some situations like that. And then you end up with a new manager who isn't interested in you, who doesn't know how to use you or wants you to do something different. I think you have to be very thoughtful if you're a young footballer about those opportunities. Now, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be some, because undoubtedly there would be situations for Daniel Maldini where he could go and play more than he is right now. That's certainly true.
Yeah.
And if you're really sort of thoughtful in picking your loan move, I'm sure you could pick one where there's some stability, but certainly at Milan, that there is a huge amount of stability and a manager who is good at working with young players. The one counterpoint that I would give, and this would be the argument for doing it, I'll say first of all, I'm fairly certain Maldini did turn down a loan move in the summer. I think there was an opportunity for him within Serie A and he didn't take it. The counterpoint is, just because of his name, he's under a degree of scrutiny anyway, but even more so while he's at Milan, that is way beyond what anyone else is facing. And, he did come off the bench in both of the Champions League games against Porto. And right at the end of the home game, he actually ends up taking a corner, and it was a horrible corner at a time when Milan were chasing that goal to win the game. And you got all of this sort of internet reaction to that. Oh, shouldn't be being given this responsibility, shouldn't be the one kicking that most important corner at the end of a game. And I think that is a level of pressure and scrutiny that he's going to get at Milan that perhaps he wouldn't if he was at, just to pull a name out of the hat, Spezia. I mean, I'm not suggesting Spezia as a destination. I don't know if that's a club that we're linked to him. I'm just first one that came into my head. So that there is another side to that coin. And I think if there was another team in Serie A who were someone who you felt really good about the management of, if it was Igor Tudor at Verona and you're thinking he's not going anywhere for a while, that's something stable, then maybe I would feel differently about it. But at the same time, I can definitely see benefits to staying where he is.
Well, you can choose Hellas Verona, but maybe I want Igor Tudor to be our next coach. And then what are you going to do?
It's true. I was thinking about getting fired, but he could get poached and see if Tudor keeps going like this.
This is a problem sometimes with teams. You don't know whether they're going to get fired or the coach is so good you're just going to take him, So what do you do?
Maybe that's who will end up replacing Jose at Roma when things go sour.
Jesus,
I shouldn't keep poking this Mourinho bear. I'm going to get in trouble.
I actually am really enjoying it. Couldn't believe, because somebody who like Gab, who hates or like at least criticizes Antonio Conte as much as me, seemed to be so on board with Jose Mourinho and so understanding, But this is actually an interesting one. I'm going to ask you this question. Only because it's also so relevant. And this is from Leo in Manchester, who I assume has been to several heated derbies in that particular city. But the question is, during the Milan derby, we saw Inter and Milan fans sitting together in their team colours at the San Siro, something that would be impossible in England. Is this a normal thing in Italian football? Yeah, well, I guess Manchester City and United fans might not be sitting in the stands being quite so lovey-dovey with one another as some of the couples that were picked up on by the cameras.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain it's true that never happens in England, but I do understand the point. I think where that does happen in England, I suppose the point which he does say in the question, the fact they're wearing their team colours very openly would be quite rare. I think what's fascinating about Italian football stadiums is even within a lot of these stadiums, there's different islands, You could not go into the Curva. You could not go into either Curva, the Nord or the Sud, and be in that sort of situation where you've got people wearing colours of the team that is not represented in that Curva. You couldn't go wearing a Milan shirt and sit with the Inter Curva in the Curva Nord and be with those ultras and think that was going to go down well. You could not do it the other way around in the Sud. But actually, the middle parts of the stadium, where it is
fancy,
even within the middle parts of the stadium, yeah, well, it's not all fancy, but even within the middle part of the stadium, there's different sections. And I think there's this really interesting dynamic where you talk to Italian football fans. I've talked to plenty who would have defined themselves even as ultras at a younger age in their life. And they said, no, I'm older. I'm just a tifoso. I'm just a fan. So it's like there's this maturing process for some fans and they go sit in the middle, and there's sections of the middle of the stadium that are still partisan but less contentious. And then there are the sections like you're talking about, Mina, that are the fancy sections, which are probably where the cameras are going to be trained a lot of the time because you get a certain degree of glamour there. And you certainly have pretty open mixing in those parts of the stadiums, even in some of the most heated rivalries. I would say that Milan-Inter, while there's passion there, while they dislike each other, it's not one of the nasty rivalries, like, for instance, the Rome derby, where you really expect violence outside the stadium often. Outside the Rome derby, things do often get the involvement of riot police, the sort of throwing of Molotov cocktails, things like that have happened much more regularly than for instance at the Milan derby.
So you don't think you'll see a Fiorentina fan hugging a Hunchback fan?
But the point is that even at the Rome derby, I've been at the Rome derby, and where the press box is, which is extraordinary, the press box for a Rome derby, because you go to the press box, and if you've come from a media environment like I have in Britain and even covering sports in other parts of the world, where you're always told strictly be neutral, you can't show colours in the press box. Oh, at the Rome derby, there were colours, there were flags, there were scarves in the press box, there were things going on. But where the part of the stadium which that is in, is the area with the most expensive tickets in the stadium around you. There were couples there, even for the Rome derby, wearing both sets of colours. So even some of those games that you think of as the most heated, there will be a part of the stadium where it's expensive tickets, where it's just allowed to go and not be involved in that oppositional way, I suppose, that happens in the really heated parts of the stadium.
I mean, this isn't a story necessarily about, but my boyfriend's an Inter fan. I'm a Juve fan. We'll wear our colours and go and we'll watch the Derby d'Italia and he'll annoy me about it. And I'll probably try to throw him off the ledge most of the time, but we'll do it. Another story is that I always watch, if Juventus are in the Champions League finals as a fan. And I remember going to Cardiff to watch it against Real Madrid. Sadly, my tickets were in the middle of what can only be described as a very vociferous Real Madrid section. And there was me in my black and white stripes with all the Madridistas. And I don't think I've ever been treated nicer in my life. I'll tell you that much. Maybe it is because they won and I was so miserable. Maybe it's because I'm pint-sized and everyone felt a little bit sad about bullying me because I'm so tiny. And I'm all 5'3". So, but I'll tell you, they were so fantastic about it. They were like, you really need to start supporting a team that knows how to win Champions League finals, And obviously, I think there's always, like Nikki said, sections where it's totally understandable and totally done. Sometimes I wonder whether these things are overblown, I know this sounds crazy, but when you're learning to be a policeman, not that this is something that I know on a personal level, but, they tell you to speak to somebody who's trying to rob you or burgle you or whatever and just get the human side. And when you do, you hope that you'll crack through. And when you are speaking to fans, no matter how, loud they are, sometimes at least if you are in a certain section where you feel safe, I have walked into things that I didn't walk to, but when I sort of laugh about it or I don't know, they are just still human beings. And sometimes people just want to get rowdy, but actually they're just really lovable people outside. So I don't know. But yeah, that's my feeling on it. And I'll show you, or I'll hopefully in the next Derby d'Italia, nobody dies in this partnership that I have with my beau. I think that's probably all we have time for when it comes to the questions this week. But please keep them coming in. But we hope you enjoyed the Serie A Chronicles Q&A. If you haven't yet listened to our main show from earlier in the week with Gabriella Marcotti, then please download that from wherever you get your podcasts. Get your questions in on Twitter at Serie A Chron Pod with the hashtag Chronicles Q&A. Links to all Serie A Chronicles social media are in the show notes. And you can find both of us on Twitter at Nikki Bandini and at Mina Rizuki. Leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And consider supporting the show at serieachronicles.com/supporter. Thank you from me, Mina. Thank you from you, Nikki. Say bye.
Bye.
And we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao for now.
Good. I need a catchy sign off like ciao for now.
Oh, yeah? Wait, what are we doing now?
Cool, guys. So do I hit hang up then, or?
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.